So this is, again, as most of these topics are, this is a topic that could be explored for days, no, weeks, actually months, perhaps years, perhaps lifetimes. So in other words, what I'm saying is there is a lot to really dive deep into any important, particularly spiritual topic. It opens up a whole door to a whole new world. So the idea of these, talks that we have on Sundays is like an introduction to plant some seeds for consideration and for meditation, and to see how they are applicable, if they are applicable, and how they may be applicable in my own personal journey. This is how knowledge, wisdom is presented, not dogmatically, not like people are meant to blindly accept anything, but actually is meant for an introspective person to consider, even if it doesn't fit in with my current view of myself or of my journey in life, rather than just rejecting that or just, as I said, blindly accepting something, but to explore if there is something deeper and worthwhile and profound. So perhaps tonight we might be touching on a few things which may give some food for thought. This is what we are hoping. So success, what does that even mean? What is success? What is the definition of success? Because this is what it's about, the keys to leading a successful life. This is inseparable from our view of ourself. You cannot separate what is success, what is the meaning of success, and how to achieve that success without actually understanding who we are. So the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, 5,000 years ago, spoke to the Pandava prince, Arjuna, who was going through a great struggle in his life at the start of the battle of Kuruksetra. He was filled with doubt and confusion, and in this state Arjuna turns to Krishna, who is his charioteer in this particular battle. And he turns to him for guidance and asking Krishna, please instruct me. What should I do in life? Please help me out of this predicament. It seems like I'm between a rock and a hard place. It's a lose-lose no matter what I do. So in this condition of being overwhelmed with grief, Arjuna turns to Sri Krishna for guidance. And the whole of the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna responding to the questions of Arjuna on how to overcome what he's going through in life. So similarly, these truths which Krishna spoke 5,000 years ago to Arjuna are also applicable in our struggles in life. The struggles are not different that Arjuna was going through and that people went through 5,000 years ago. They may manifest themselves in different ways because of the different culture and the times which we are in, but basically they come down to the same struggles and problems. And the problems which every one of us faces, there was a great spiritual personality whose name was Sanatana Goswami. He appeared 500 years ago in India, and he approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who many of you have heard of if you've been coming to our programs. And he approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and actually, it's described with a straw in his teeth, which this is a sign in the Vedic culture, this is a sign of humility, holding a straw between one's teeth and approaching with folded hands and actually asking Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about these same ideas, these same struggles which Arjuna was asking Krishna about 5,000 years ago. Srila Sanatana Goswami is asking Sri Chaitanya. And basically it comes down to these things. Sanatana Goswami was a very educated, wealthy personality who had a high position in the government at that time. It's described that he spoke at least 5 different languages, and he was a direct advisor to the governor. So he was not just your average person. But in humility, he actually, and in wanting to solve the problems of life. So he asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, why is it? People say that I am educated, that I am intelligent, that I am rich, but factually I do not even know who I am. I have no idea who I am. What is the purpose of my life? And how to overcome the 3 problems, the 3 types of suffering that I am experiencing. Now, every single one of us also experiences these same problems of life. They are problems caused by one's body and mind. How many doctors are there in any city, even any small town? You don't have to even walk far to find a medical clinic or a hospital, because everybody has some problems with their body. Aches, not only are there doctors, what else is there? Chiropractors, massage therapists, acupuncturists, Reiki healers, right? All kind of things, naturopaths. So these are there because every single one of us who has a body, we are troubled by the pains and the trouble which the body gives us. Does anyone here not have any troubles with their body whatsoever in their whole life? You'll be a game person to put your hand up on that one. So the body causes us trouble. Even trying to sit here in meditation, it's, probably see me doing it, but I look around the room and you see, this kind of thing, people doing that kind of thing, because the body is harassing me. I'm just sitting here doing good for it. What else? The mind. Now the mind can even be even much more trouble than the body, because even if your body is relative, maybe you do your yoga, maybe you go to the gym, you go for your swim, whatever you might do. So you're trying to get your body to not harass so much. So maybe you kind of got that down a little bit. But then meanwhile, the mind, constantly harassing, always putting forward some kind of trouble, some kind of worry, some kind of concern. Again, or is that just me? All of you guys, your minds are completely, perfectly, beautifully under control and never ever hassle you. I kind of don't think that's true, if I may be as bold to say so. So the body is a source of suffering. The mind, in my opinion, is even a deeper source of worry and suffering for us, for the living being. So the body and mind. Then there is what else? Other living beings. Other living beings are constantly harassing us. If you're married, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not married, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Bosses, employees, employers, people on the road, husbands, wives, friends, partners, children. Children are such a source of worry. Parents are so oppressive. Parents just harass kids so much. Then of course there's things like mosquitoes, flies, barking dogs, snakes in Australia. I have friends from New Zealand and they're afraid to come to Australia because they read all these stories about snakes that'll bite you and all kinds of spiders that bite you, and right? It's like weird. Then you go for a swim. Madilu went for a walk along the beach about a month ago, and there was 2 sea snakes on the beach, just here on the Gold Coast. So even you go for a swim and there's sharks that'll bite you, and blue bottles that'll sting you, and what's the other ones? Irukandji, is that what they're called? They'll kill you. Other living beings are harassing us. What else is there? Got another clue, another category or type of harassment. Forces of nature, exactly. Too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry, too windy, too snowy, too icy, constantly. Volcanoes, right? Just recently, in the last month or two, volcanoes. And then, so Sanatana Goswami, being an intelligent person, is actually asking, why do these harass me? What can be done about it? What is, so he was from a external, or shall we call it a worldly point of view, Sanatana Goswami was extremely successful. A member of government, advisor to the governor, spoke many different languages. In fact, it's described he had more than mansions, bigger than mansions. He was so well off. He had a whole, because in those days, wealth wasn't made out of plastic. You know that now, our modern wealth, it's made out of plastic. Plastic money, plastic cards, right? In those days, in that culture, it was actually gold. He had a whole storehouse full of gold. So he was a success. So how is it that a successful man is approaching a spiritual teacher and asking for help? He has achieved success already. Is it understandable? Already achieved it. And yet let me put it this way. Spiritual life begins with a doubt. Our steps into spiritual life begin from a doubt. This is the first catalyst for us. And what is that doubt? Gee, if we look at society and the blueprint that they put forward for success, what is it? I'm sure everyone in this room can actually explain. What is the blueprint for success which the broader society puts forward? Starting at 5 years old. Where does it go from 5? What's the next step to being successful in life from 5? Education, school. How many years of school? 3 or 4, so you learn to read and write and can count your money when you go to the shop. Is that? No? How many? Minimum 12. Minimum 12, but that's just for losers. If you want to be a success. You've got to go to university, postgraduate, this, that. Basically about 20 years. So that then you can achieve success. So what is the success that one then achieves from that endeavour of education? And not only is it to go to school, it's to get good marks. So there's a pressure to do well in school. And then they judge it after year 12. What's it called? Huh? ATAR. ATAR. They didn't have that in my day. So then all those 12 years, have they been a successful 12 years? Well, there it is. You get a score that ranks you, whether you've been successful or not. Don't most of us buy into this? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying we buy into it. Because then, to be more successful after being that successful, then of course it means being successful in those 12 years or more will mean that we will have a better chance of doing well in life. Now, what does doing well in life mean? What did your parents want you to do? Have a good job, not just, be a, taxi driver or something. Have a good job. If you can, lawyer, doctor, something substantial like that. Or at least get a trade, So there's this kind of thing. So then, well, okay, what is that? Why is that successful? Well, that means that you'll get better money and you'll have better security in your job. So now, success, there's a benchmark for success. And then, as I think was in the copy for the promoting the talk tonight, something like there was a T-shirt back in the 80s or whenever it was. He who dies with the most stuff wins. Right? You heard that one? He who dies with the most stuff wins at life, the game of life. So, if you end up being a multi-millionaire and you leave behind multi-millions, then you're a success. But if you only leave behind $10 when you leave, you're not a success because you didn't have enough stuff. So then there's, we could go on this track for a very long time, from things like being in a successful band. Most people who are in a band, they want to be successful, right? Well, we do as well. We want to be successful with our little band, but generally it's a different kind of success. Back in the 80s, I worked with various bands, some quite well-known bands here in Australia. Not as a musician, I was doing lighting and stage for different bands. And get a record out, let the record go into the charts, tour, get good money, get groupies, drugs. I worked for this one quite famous, internationally famous band. And at the end of this one gig, it was actually at Lismore, they were touring Australia. And at the end of it, I was going past the stage back into the dressing room behind, in the auditorium. And they were playing their last number, what do you call it, encore. And the guitar player who was playing a riff leaned over to me as I'm walking by the stage and said, "I want some cocaine and some women in the dressing room in 5 minutes." To me. Where am I going to get this stuff from? So this is success if you have all of that. And anyway, we can go on and on. Of course, I'm using certain examples here. Of course, we can use not everybody, not everyone in this room, probably no one in this room sees that as a measure of success. But we do get swept up in this societal blueprint of success to some degree or other. So to come back to that one of those original points that we were talking about, what is success is inseparable from actually, how we view ourselves. Who are we? If we are this body, if this is me, and I have, 70, 80 years, and then that is the end of the story. There is nothing past that. I am born, I have a certain amount of time to achieve success, and because I am this body, this is me, then success is inseparable from this concept of my identity. So therefore, name, fame, riches, some kind of sensual pleasures, experiences, position in society, etc., becomes the benchmark of success. So when we turn to the Bhagavad Gita, here Krishna is saying, in there's two simple ideas here that actually shed light, help us to actually look deeper into this idea of success. Krishna says, for the living entity, for the living being, for the soul, there is never birth nor death. The living being is unborn, eternal, ever-existing, undying and primeval. The soul is not slain when the body is slain. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, similarly the self accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So with this insight from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, we can see our life as being a longer journey, a continuum, which does not end with the end of this body. Is that understandable, the difference between this view of the self, of who we are, and where that leads to? Because this is but a spot in time. Being eternal and being spiritual, not temporary material beings, then this, as I said, throws a deeper perspective on what success is and where we can find it and how to pursue it. It is a longer life than just 70 or 80 years. It's kind of like, let's say, you finish school, just to use an example, we finish high school, and then, you're going to kind of plan out what the rest of your life is. And if someone says, well, you only have one day to live after you graduate from high school, one day, that's it, and then you're going to plan out your life, what kind of plan could you imagine that you would put in place? What kind of things would you add to your to-do list if your span of life is just one day? Any thoughts? No one's mind here has one thought. Spend time with loved ones. Exactly. But also, as the saying goes, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow I die. Right? That's pretty much it. And fill in the blanks, who do I eat with, who do I drink with, and who am I merry with, right? But that's kind of it. So if someone, let's say, the person's 16, and, the average lifespan is 80-something, but if they're under the false impression that they only have one day in their life and have to plan for one day, they're going to make very different choices and, judge whether their life is successful, rather than if they understood they have another 70 years left. Does that understand? Am I putting this making sense? Because if they understand they have 70 years, not one day, not 24 hours, they're going to make more longer term plans for their life to achieve a successful life. Similarly, if we understand that we are eternal spiritual beings, that never was there a time that I did not exist, nor in the future shall ever I cease to exist. So my life is much longer than this 70 odd years that I may think that I actually have. And therefore I will plan and see my life from a completely different perspective, just like that graduate from the high school would see things differently. So basically this idea that he who dies with the most stuff wins, my spiritual teacher used a very graphic example. This was back in the 80s, but I don't know if they still have these things. But there used to be these competitions where if somehow or other, if you got into this TV show competition thing, you had 7 minutes or something with a shopping trolley, and you go around this big shop and you can kind of throw everything, whatever you can throw into the shopping cart in 10 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever it was, and then you get to have that, right? So have you actually ever seen that? Maybe some American shows and things like that. So if the ones I remember seeing, the person is completely frantic. They're just chucking anything in, just grabbing armfuls of stuff without even bothering to see what it is, right? And throwing it into their shopping cart, just so they've got something in the 3 minutes or the 7 minutes or whatever it is that they've been allotted, and then they get to keep it. But here's the rub. What you're not told in this TV show, in this thing, is that you can do all of that, and then when you go out the checkout, they take it all back. There's the trick. All they do is tell you, just get as much as you can. And you think, great, I got all this stuff. But then as you go to leave, they just put it all back on the shelf. So that's in connection with what we accumulate here. All the external stuff, whether it be the $1 million or the $10, the iPhone Ultra Max Plus, or the cheap Chinese thing that you got for $54 at Target. It doesn't matter. Both of them have to stay behind. So I think we've kind of painted that picture enough. We don't need to keep painting. I think, we've all experienced or understand this to some degree. So what is it? What is success then? Because success means having a satisfied heart. That is success. Having a heart which is satisfied. Now, nothing temporary and nothing material can actually satisfy my heart. Because, why? I am not this body, and I am not the mind, and anything material, and anything which is in connection with the temporary nature of this world, because I am not material, and I am not temporary, it cannot satisfy my heart. So therefore, even though I have this stuff, I am actually not successful because I am not satisfied. So far, okay? It makes sense, at least theoretically. This makes sense to us. Living on this platform of this vision of eternity, that is another question. Now, because we are part and parcel, we are part of, in the same way that a sun ray is inseparable from the sun. In other words, the sun ray gets its light and warmth because it is connected to the sun. Yeah? That's the source of its light and its warmth. But if the sun ray is separated from the sun, it cannot maintain its light or its warmth. Easy to understand, right? The same way, a simple example here is if there's a big bonfire and there's a spark which is coming from the bonfire, the big fire. If it is separate from the fire, it soon loses its warmth and light. So similarly, we are part of the Supreme Soul in the same way as the ray, the particle of sun is part of the sun. And it is in that connection to the sun, in this case, the connection to the spiritual sun, so to speak, the cause of all causes, the original cause, the Supreme Soul, God, whatever particular word, time, title, name we would like to use, we're referring to that same original cause, that source of everything. So spiritual life means actually my life being guided by wisdom and spiritual love. By wisdom and spiritual love. If we are on that platform of wisdom and spiritual love, then our life is a success. In other words, in yoga, in union, in connection with the Supreme Soul, through spiritual love. This is actually the goal of life. And then when we leave through the checkout, all of these spiritual assets and investments that we have put in our spiritual shopping trolley does not get taken away from us. We take it with us. We have it. It is inseparable from us. So we get to keep those spiritual riches which we have invested our time and energy in accumulating while we have this 70 or 80 years. Is that understandable? As I said, we could then now go into this in a much more deeper, dive very deeply into this, but we will be here a long time. This is why we're running different classes and that now. The Enlightened Life Foundation course that we started recently, these are all to help us explore more fully, more completely these ideas which we are touching on briefly and introducing here on Sundays. So we should, in the same way that if you want to be successful, you can go to success seminars. There's many that we can go to, whether it be real estate investment or so many different things. You go to certain coaches if you want to be a successful tennis player. You don't go to someone who, if you go to some investment seminar and they're going to help you become, a millionaire or at least wealthy, and you kind of go to the person and say, well, how much money do you have in the bank? It's, well, $15. And you're going to teach me how to be successful? Well, I got some ideas. You're not very likely to, kind of go, yeah, well, look, here's the $300, and I want to listen to what you have to say. The same is there spiritually. We want to actually go to a success seminar which is connected to those who are successful spiritually. And this process of yoga, in where these investment portfolios are being handed down, is called disciplic succession, or parampara. In other words, I have my teacher who I am learning from so that I may become successful in my life. He learned from a successful personality, his teacher, who learned from another successful spiritual personality, his teacher. And this line of successful spiritual entrepreneurs goes back to Krishna, the original cause, the Supreme Soul, the source of everything. So these strategies, if we can talk in this kind of language, have been handed down through this system of yoga. So for me, am I a success? Time will tell. So even though you may consider rightly that I am not completely successful spiritually, I am applying these practices, and my life has purpose, it has meaning, it has value, it has joy, it has happiness. I am becoming more and more satisfied within myself. So because of what I have applied has brought about some degree of success, then of course I am encouraged and intelligent enough to consider, to actually follow the strategies which those who have achieved spiritual success have followed, because I have had some success. Now, what is one of the practices? As I said, on the last Thursday of every month we have our Krishna Bhakti evenings. So in these evenings, it is actually where we learn these successful strategies and apply them. So if you want to learn more about how to be a success spiritually, then this is what we're offering. But the central practice is what we are doing now. This practice of kirtan, of hearing, meditating on, chanting, repeating these names of the Supreme, these actually bring satisfaction to the mind and to the heart, because I am in direct connection with the source of all success, the Supreme Soul, through transcendental sound, through the holy names of the Supreme. In the same way as the sun ray is in connection with the whole sun, we are in connection with the spiritual sun, Krishna, God, the Supreme, the original cause, through transcendental sound. So if we apply this one strategy regularly to our life, we will actually achieve success. So now, as when you go to any seminar, success seminar, when I leave the seminar, it is up to me if I apply or don't apply the strategies and the techniques and the practices which I learnt in that seminar. And therefore, my success in life is in my hands. My destiny is in my hands. So we are hoping to encourage you to somehow or other make this a regular part of your life, and your life will be successful. I'll finish on one little idea. Does this mean, therefore, that I have to give up pursuing a career, and I cannot have a nice home, and I cannot have a nice car, and I have to buy the $54 Target phone, and I cannot have a decent phone? Is that the solution? No. Because riches are also relative. Some people can't even afford the $59 phone, right? So compared to them, I'm successful if I have one. The practice of yoga, the practice of karma yoga and bhakti yoga, means that I live a simple life. And that word simple is different for each one of us. So I do what I need to do in life. Career, relationships, houses, cars, phones, whatever it might be. But simultaneously put time and effort and invest in my spiritual success, parallel to whatever else I may be pursuing in life. Is that okay? Thank you very much.